Hello, dear friends. This story, every word, every scene, was written just for this channel. It's 100% original, made to bring you something real. Let's begin. Part 1 The Invite That Never Came.
My name is Vanessa Lee. I'm 31 and I never thought a holiday could sting worse than a breakup. But that's exactly what happened last year on Thanksgiving. You think you know where you stand with your family until you're standing outside the circle, watching them laugh, toast, and pass the mashed potatoes like you never existed. But let me go back because the rot didn't start there. It started 1 year earlier with one too many truths and not enough pretending. Thanksgiving the year before had been messy. I won't lie. My mom had asked me to bring just a small salad, but when I walked in with a bottle of wine and a pumpkin tart, my sister's eyes rolled so hard I swear I heard them creak. My brother's girlfriend, new, artificial, and aggressively chipper, kept touching all the food like she owned the house. I made one offhand comment about cranberry sauce being store-bought, and that was enough. My mom's face pinched. My dad sighed dramatically, and I suddenly became the difficult one again. Always the title I get when I don't smile through everything. That night ended with me taking a walk down the block, just to breathe. When I came back, half the pie was gone, and so was the seat at the table I'd left behind. No one even noticed. Not until I stood awkwardly in the doorway and my mom said, "Oh, you're back? We thought you left." I should have seen it then. I should have felt it in my chest. But part of you always wants to believe they'll come around, that families bend, stretch, maybe bruise, but don't break. This year proved me wrong. About 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I started seeing signs. My sister posted a story about finalizing the menu with a photo of my mom's kitchen. My dad sent me a random link to a flight deal as if encouraging me to travel somewhere else. No one mentioned dinner, no group text, no "what are you bringing this year?" Just silence. So I asked. I wasn't going to beg, just asked, lightly. "Hey, any plans for Thursday?" My mom wrote back. "This year it's going to be small. Just immediate family." I stared at that message for a long time. Immediate family? I was the one who stayed up with my mom when she had surgery. I was the one who covered for my sister when she couldn't make rent. But sure, suddenly I was extended, disposable. The one who ruined last Thanksgiving. I didn't respond. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat with it, let it settle into my spine like cold water. And then I made a decision. They wanted peace. They wanted a holiday with no drama. Fine. I'd give them one. One they'd never forget. And it started with a smile. Because while they were building a table full of people who kept quiet, played along, and polished silverware with fake gratitude, I was making calls. Not to friends, not to therapists, to professionals. People who knew how to make noise without raising their voices. People who could ruin a party without setting foot in the room. And the best part, my name would never come up. I started with something small, a background check. Not because I was suspicious. Because I was strategic. I already knew the cracks in my family, where the secrets were hiding, where the money was missing, where the lies had fermented under decades of "we're doing fine," but I needed receipts. Not to destroy them, just to remind them who they'd underestimated. Turns out my sister's fancy new lifestyle, the wine tastings, the Instagram-perfect kitchen remodel, wasn't as picture-perfect as she made it seem. Credit cards maxed out. Loans in my parents' names, one of which had my mother listed as a co-signer, something I was sure Mom didn't even know. My dad, he wasn't just retired, he was broke. Living off of a line of credit he pretended was a pension. And my brother, the golden boy with his perfect marriage and golden retriever, let's just say his business trips had a lot more hotel receipts than client invoices. The thing is, I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted them to acknowledge what they'd done. Not just to me, but to themselves. The way they kept propping up this perfect image while quietly crumbling inside. And when they cut me out, when they made me the scapegoat again, I decided to be the mirror. So I bought a gift basket, a big one, custom-made, gourmet, with a handwritten card. I had it delivered to my parents' house the morning of Thanksgiving, right around the time I knew the whole family would be gathering. The card inside, "Thank you for reminding me who I am, for teaching me that silence isn't love, that absence speaks louder than affection ever faked. I hope this meal tastes sweeter now that you don't have to pretend I'm part of the family. Enjoy every bite. Love always, Vanessa." That would have been enough. But the second delivery arrived 20 minutes later. Not food, not flowers. A manila envelope, neatly sealed, no return address. Inside copies, financial records, transaction histories, screenshots, printouts of things I knew would twist stomachs tighter than overcooked turkey. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just truth, the kind they couldn't ignore. the kind that cracked through all the smiling, prayer-saying, table grace nonsense and asked, "What are you really thankful for, if everything around you is built on lies?" I didn't hear from them that day or the day after. But 2 days later, my sister's husband messaged me, just 4 words, "What did you do?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because the thing about being the difficult one is, once you stop playing along, once you start naming the things they've all agreed to hide, they either see you as dangerous or as free. And I was finally, beautifully, undeniably both. The silence that followed was louder than any screaming match we'd ever had, and trust me, we'd had plenty, but this silence was different because it wasn't just avoidance, it was fear, and I could feel it like static in the air, heavy and humming. And honestly, it felt good, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because for once, I wasn't the one shrinking, the one explaining, the one being told to calm down or not take it so personally. No, this time they were the ones wondering what I knew, what else I had, and who else I might show it to. And it wasn't until 4 days later that my mother finally called, not texted. Called, and the moment I saw her name flash across my screen, I knew I had all the power. I never answered. Instead, I let it go to voicemail, and it killed me not to listen. But I had to hold the line because this wasn't about cruelty. This was about clarity. I needed them to sit in that discomfort, to taste what they'd served me last year. The bitter flavor of being left out, erased, not even worth a plate. And when she called again the next morning, I still didn't pick up, but I did finally listen to the first voicemail. Her voice was tight, not angry. Nervous, she said, "Vanessa, I think we need to talk. I think maybe there's been some misunderstanding," but that was the thing. There hadn't been any misunderstanding. They understood exactly what they were doing when they planned a family dinner without me. They just never expected consequences because for years I'd been easy to ignore, quick to forgive, slow to push back, and when she said "we miss you," I knew she meant we missed the version of you who stayed quiet, who made herself small enough to fit around our dysfunction. But that version was gone, and in her place stood someone they couldn't predict anymore. Later that week, my dad emailed me. I didn't even know he remembered how to email, and the subject line just said, "About Thanksgiving." I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, bold and unread, while I went about my day grocery shopping, cleaning my apartment, making tea, smiling at my neighbor, and somewhere between steeping chamomile and wiping down the stove, I realized something wild. I wasn't sad. I wasn't mourning the absence of people who only wanted the most obedient version of me at their table. I was relieved, and in that relief, I found something sharper than anger. Resolve. I sat down and wrote a single sentence in reply: "If you want to talk, I'm here, but only if it's honest," and then I logged off, turned off my phone.
They erased her for the sake of a quiet dinner. But when the table held more than just food, when the truth came wrapped in paper, the holiday ended long before dessert. What she discovered next was just the beginning. Don't miss part 2. The most shocking part is still to come. Part 2, what they called peace was just silence. The quiet didn't last forever, because peace like that never does not, when it threatens to expose everything others are still trying to keep buried, and I knew it was coming the moment my phone rang at 7 a.m. the Monday after Thanksgiving. Not a number I recognized, but the city code matched my parents' town, and my stomach dropped before I even picked up. When I answered, it was my sister, not the screeching panicked version I expected, but the brittle fake calm one, the voice she used with salespeople and PDA moms when she needed something. She said my name like it tasted bad, Vanessa, and then silence, like she was waiting for me to fold, for me to fill the gap I didn't. I let her sit in it, and finally she said, "I just want to know what you're planning." I blinked at that. "What I'm planning?" I asked evenly. She exhaled sharp. "You always do this," she snapped. "Make it look like you're the quiet one, the mature one, while you set fires and act like you're just watching the smoke." And that's when I knew she was scared, not of me but of what might come next. She didn't ask what I wanted or how I felt. She wanted control, and when she couldn't get it, she lashed out, said, "You ruined everything." Mom's crying, dad's furious. "You humiliated the whole family." And then she added the thing she thought would shame me: "We told grandma you were traveling, that's why you weren't there." And I almost laughed, because that lie was so thin it barely held its shape, and yet they'd all agreed to it again, because in our family appearance was everything. Pain could be endured as long as it looked pretty and clean. I let her talk until she wound down, and then I said softly, "I'm not planning anything, I already did." And I hung up. The silence afterward felt earned, like a closed book or a courtroom verdict. I made coffee, sat by the window, and thought about all the Thanksgivings before this, the ones where I sat at that table wearing politeness like armor, where I'd pass dishes and ignore the glances when someone brought up something close to real. And I realized something wild: I didn't miss it, not the food, not the traditions, not even the people, because the version of them I remembered wasn't real. It was curated, filtered, like those holiday photos they posted with matching outfits and fake smiles I didn't want back, and I wanted out for good. I didn't hear from them again that week, but I knew it wasn't over, because people like them don't just let Things go, they regroup, they strategize, they find new ways to spin the story, and sure enough, on Sunday morning I got a notification from Facebook, a tag from my aunt, a group photo from the Thanksgiving table, everyone smiling, my sister's baby in her lap, my mom holding a wine glass, my dad mid-laugh, and right in the caption she wrote, "Family isn't always perfect, but it's always worth protecting." I stared at it for a long time, and then I did something I never thought I would. I reported the post, not out of spite but because I was done being a prop in their performance. I didn't comment, I didn't text, I didn't even flinch. I just closed the app and went back to living the life they said I'd never manage without them. A few days later I got an email from Grandma. The subject line was simple, "Just thinking of you," and when I opened it there were no paragraphs, no pleasantries, just one line handwritten in a scanned photo of a note card she must have mailed to others before too. It said, "I heard what happened, I love you anyway," and that word anyway hit me harder than I expected because it meant she knew and still chose me, not a version of me, not a sanitized version that played along, but the one who finally stood up and said enough. And for a moment I just sat there holding the screen like it might slip away, because in my family love always had conditions. It was earned through silence and obedience, but maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to be. And that one little message cracked something in me open just enough to let something real come in. I didn't reply to Grandma's message, but I saved it, not on my phone but printed it, folded it into the inside cover of the journal I used to write in when I still believed keeping secrets meant protecting people. And as the days passed I kept waiting for the guilt to sneak back in like it always had before, but it didn't. It was just quiet, clean, like after a storm when the air feels still and sharp, and I started to realize I didn't know them my discomfort just to keep their peace. I went to work, smiled at clients, went home to my small apartment that wasn't much but was mine, and for the first time in years I didn't double-check my words before posting, didn't wonder if someone in the family group chat would twist them into a warning sign. I was done shrinking to fit into places that never had room for me anyway. Then on the Friday after the second week I saw it, a comment under an old photo. My cousin, the only one who never really picked sides, just wrote, "Hope you're okay, call me sometime." And it wasn't dramatic or emotional, just a crack in the wall big enough to breathe through, and I didn't know yet if I'd call or when, but it meant something more than I could say, because it wasn't about fixing things, it was about being seen, not the version of me they crafted, but the one who finally stopped pretending the holidays didn't hurt. And maybe, just maybe, next year I'd spend Thanksgiving with people who didn't ask me to disappear just to keep the illusion alive. They thought she'd stay quiet. That guilt would pull her back. But Vanessa wasn't playing by their rules anymore, and the silence they once used to control her? Now it belonged to her. But what happens when someone else in the family breaks ranks too? In part 3, the game changes. Part 3, I wasn't the first, just the loudest. It was 2 days before Christmas when I got the letter, not an email, not a text, but a real envelope, sealed and handwritten, like something from another decade. My name was written in that careful, slanted script I hadn't seen in years. No return address, just a local postmark. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, torn from a notebook, folded once, neatly. It said, "I watched what they did to you, and I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner. You didn't ruin anything. They did." That was it. No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I knew it was from Claire. My cousin, the one who used to braid my hair while our parents argued in the kitchen, the one who always passed me extra cornbread under the table when I was told I'd had enough, the one who vanished from family events years ago and was never mentioned again. I used to ask where she went, and Mom would say, "She always needed too much attention." I remember that now. The way they rewrote people after they left. The way they erased them gently, with sighs and offhand blame, until we stopped asking. I held that letter in both hands, rereading it like it was a lifeline, because for the first time, someone had confirmed it. What they did to me, what I felt, what I carried. Claire saw it too. And suddenly, I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the first. Just the loudest. She left quietly. I left with noise. But we left for the same reason. I wrote her back the next day. Not a text. A letter, just like hers. I kept it short. "Thank you. You didn't owe me anything, but you gave me more than anyone else ever has." I signed it and walked to the post office alone, no coat, just adrenaline and a strange feeling I hadn't known in years, relief. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not even Dana. Not even Jacob. It felt sacred. Like something I wanted to keep untouched by the rest of them. Like a soft place that still hadn't been poisoned. And just knowing that Claire was still out there, watching, remembering, choosing this moment to reach for me, it gave me something new. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The kind I'd been told my whole life didn't count. But it does. And it grows out. I started to notice the things that used to slip by me, like how every time I spoke in a group, someone would interrupt before I finished, or how my stories would be met with tight smiles and redirected attention. It wasn't new. It had always been that way, but now it stood out like bruises I hadn't noticed until someone pointed them out. I watched my family through a new lens, not as flawed people doing their best, but as architects of silence, masters of redirection. They didn't just ignore the harm, they rewrote it. They made it my fault. My sensitivity. My neediness. My unwillingness to just move on. And when I didn't play along, when I didn't soften my words or dress them up in palatable jokes, they recoiled like I'd spilled something sour on the table. I didn't fight it anymore. I let them flinch. I let the tension sit heavy in the room. I let my presence be uncomfortable. Because I wasn't there to perform for them. Not anymore. And then came the moment I didn't expect. Mom called. Her voice was too bright, the kind of tone she used when she wanted something, not when she missed me. She said, "We're thinking of hosting Christmas this year. Everyone's invited." I asked, "Even me?" And she laughed, like I'd told a joke she didn't quite understand but didn't want to admit. "Of course you," she said. But there was something hollow behind it, like she knew I wasn't asking about an invitation, but a place. A seat. That wasn't just tolerated, but mine by right. I told her I'd think about it, and she said, "Don't make this about last year, Vanessa. You blew that all out of proportion." And just like that, the quiet strength I'd been holding turned cold. Not weak. Cold. Sharp. Steady. Because she didn't call to make peace. She called to reset the story. To tell it the way they always did, with me as the problem. I said, "I hope you have a great time," and hung up. That night I lit a candle and sat by the window, not out of ritual or sadness, but to remind myself that choosing peace doesn't mean returning to war zones. Dressed like family dinners. And outside, in the deep stillness, I finally realized, I hadn't ruined anything. I'd only stopped pretending. And that's just the beginning. Vanessa's strength isn't loud, it's patient. Cold. Strategic. And in part 4, the people who dismissed her are about to learn what it really costs to rewrite someone's story without their consent. Stay with us, she's not finished. Yet, part 4, she didn't want an apology. Just the silence to finally be hers. I didn't go to Christmas that year. I didn't explain, didn't excuse, didn't soften the blow. I just didn't show up. Instead, I spent the day walking through the quiet part of town where the houses were lit with soft amber lights and no one knew my name. I passed windows full of laughter, tables with mismatched chairs, kids yelling from the stairs, and none of it hurt. Not like before. Because I'd stopped comparing their noise to my silence. I went home, made myself dinner, lit the fire, and didn't check my phone. Not once. The next day, Dana called. She said Mom was upset, said I should have warned them, said it was unfair to let everyone wait for me like that. I asked her, "Did you wait? Or did you just want to see if I'd cave?" She didn't answer. Just sighed and said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I smiled. Because that sentence used to break me. Now it just told me I was finally doing something right. A week later, I posted a photo. Just me. Smiling. At peace. The caption read, "Sometimes the only way to be included is to stop needing permission." I didn't tag anyone. Didn't write a call out. But they saw it. I know they did. Because Jacob texted me, "That post was a bit much, don't you think?" And I replied, "No, just that. One word." The end of the performance. The end of the apology. 3 days later, my aunt left a voicemail. She said she missed me, said the house felt emptier this year, said she wished we could all just move past whatever this was. But she never said sorry. Not once. Not for the dinner, not for the comments, not for the years of looking away while they cut me down with polite smiles and sugar-coated slaps. And that told me everything. Because they didn't want healing, they wanted harmony. The kind that comes from one person swallowing the noise so the rest can eat in peace. I used to be that person. The one who'd laugh a little too loud. To fill the gaps, who'd offer to help with dishes just to stay useful, who'd absorb the discomfort so no one else had to feel it. But not anymore. And when New Year's came, I didn't toast to fresh starts or family unity. I toasted to clarity. To the quiet, sharp truth that sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is let the cycle spin without you. Let them gossip. Let them rewrite. Let them miss you only in the ways that make them feel better. Because absence isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a gift, and then spring came. Quietly, without ceremony, just soft breezes and open windows and mornings. That smelled like possibility. I started planting things, not just flowers but new habits, new ways of being. I stopped checking their socials. I stopped imagining what they said when I wasn't there. I stopped needing to know. Because I had built something sturdier than belonging. I had built peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't come with applause. But it was real. I went to brunch with friends who didn't need me to shrink to make room for their comfort. I sent a birthday card to a cousin I actually liked. I donated the dress I wore to that awful Thanksgiving and bought one that made me feel like sunlight. And when the next holiday rolled around, I got a group text, from Dana, of course, asking if I'd be joining the festivities this year. I didn't respond. Instead, I booked a small cabin 2 hours away. No signal. Just books, a fireplace, and my own company. And it was enough. More than enough. Because once upon a time, I thought family meant folding yourself small enough to fit inside someone else's expectations. Now I knew better. Family isn't who's in the room. It's who lets you breathe in it. And if that meant spending every Thanksgiving alone for the rest of my life, I'd still be freer than I ever was, surrounded by people who only loved me when I stayed quiet. So when the turkey photos and group shots hit my feed again, the ones with smiling faces and place cards that never bore my name, I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I just closed the app, leaned back in that creaky wooden chair, and let the silence wrap around me like something earned. Something honest. Something I'd built myself. Thank you for staying with Vanessa's story. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away without looking back, and build something better in the silence they once used to erase you. Her piece wasn't loud. But it was real. And that made it powerful. This story, the script, the voice, and every visual moment, was created from scratch for this channel. No reused content. No templates. Just one fully original story, written by hand, to bring you something true.